Hello, everyone. This is Frank DiMora with the End Times Research Ministry and also the Bible Prophecy Man. And these are two of the sites that I have connecting the dots between Bible prophecy and current events. And what I'm about to share with you is extremely important. And it is vital information that anyone should know about, whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian. And that has to do with the Temple Mount and what's happening on the Temple Mount. Now, for years, I have been warning, giving you the steps, step by step, what was going to happen in the future to bring it to the point where the Jewish people would be able to go up on the Temple Mount and pray. And they haven't been able to do that because we've had these Arab nations. Every time a Jew went up to the Temple Mount, they would cause havoc, and a lot of people were arrested, and they tried to keep the Jews off the Temple Mount. Well, in my scenario, according to what I saw was going to happen in the future, I had warnings as far back as 2015, and I'm going to show you some of these at my website. I'm going to put up this information. So after this video, you can go and you can check what I'm about to show you. Now, you'll see a screen here. It says steps that are changing the status quo. And I knew that it was going to happen based on what I know from the Word of God in prophecy. And I know that whatever Jesus says is the truth. And whatever he warns about and says that this is going to happen in the end times, you can be guaranteed it's going to happen, because he is the Messiah, the real Messiah. So what I want to focus on, because there's a lot of people who don't know Daniel 9:27, the significance of Daniel 9:27 in our generation. So let me show you what it says first of all. It says, he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abomination he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. In other words, when it's talking about he, in the context of the book of Daniel, in this particular section, he's talking about the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is going to come on the scene in the last days. We know that it's in our generation, because we're seeing all of the birth-paying signs that Jesus gave to us. For example, just read Matthew chapter 24, and it's a whole list of earthquakes and pestilence and crazy weather, storms, huge waves, and it goes on and on. So the many people that is going to see this 7-year confirmation, some type of agreement, that it's going to be between Israel and many. Now, we know who the many are. It's because it's Israel's enemies. And one by one, they're joining what is called the Abraham Accords. Now, last night, I went to a study group. Doesn't matter where it was, but I asked how many people here know what the Abraham Accords are. Now, I was supposed there was probably 23 people in that study, and one person knew what that was. And it's very dangerous if you don't know what the Abraham Accords are in relation to Daniel 9:27. Chances are you don't know much about prophecy of the last days, and the Lord told us to keep on the watch, especially don't forsaking the church, as it says in Hebrews. Don't forsake the gathering of the saints, especially as you see that day approaching. So, the last couple of days, I have been posting you information about what's going on with the governments in Israel, and how the steps that I said were going to be taken over these course of years are already here. Now, the picture you're seeing right here, I put this post up a few days ago, And let me just read it. It says, just a few days ago, I warned you what to look for concerning more news about the Jews building their third temple. Now keep in mind, this third temple is the one that the Antichrist is going to go in. As I said a few days ago, I just finished my screenplay concerning this very issue. That was perfect timing to release the screenplay. Now, I released the screenplay on May 25th, and then 2 days later, this news broke about these Jews going up and actually prostrating themselves on the Temple Mount, which is unheard of. Let me go on. It says, in the past 2 days, we have seen news that runs parallel to my fictional screenplay. I do not think this is a coincidence. Please read what the Lord reveals to us concerning the Antichrist and this Jewish third temple. Watch the news, because what you're seeing is the road being paved for the Jews to pray on the Temple Mount and build their third temple. It is coming. If you're reading this post and you do not know the significance of the Jews praying on the temple now or building a third temple, you better read my script, because even though it is fictional, I use the Lord's words to bring the script to reality. So when you read this script, and some of the people who've already read it told me that it was hard to put down, which is a blessing to me. But in the script, I'm showing individual characters and how they have to respond to the events that are being unfolded in front of them, that shows before and after the rapture of the church. And I make it as real as possible. I don't think there's anything on the market shows the reality of these figures and what they're going through based on the word of the Lord, what's happening during the tribulation period. Now, if you're unaware about the third temple, and probably a lot of people don't know about the prophecies concerning the third temple. But when you go to, so any of the pictures, when you go over to my prophecies sites, if you click on the photo, it's going to enlarge and it's going to make it clear for you. But here, what I did is I put up the prophecies in the scriptures. I'm not going to read them all. I'm just going to leave them up on the screen. You could read them at your own leisure. But these are the prophecies that the word of the Lord, God tells us that there's going to be a third temple built. And this is the third temple, as I said, that the Antichrist is going to go in to this third temple in 3.5 years into the 7-year agreement, this covenant that's going to be confirmed by the Antichrist. And when he goes into that temple at the midpoint of the tribulation, it will be at that time that he tells everybody he is God. And that's when all hell breaks loose on this, where the judgment of Jesus Christ, the judgment starts to fall on the unrighteous who rejected the love message of Jesus Christ. And now they're going to have to live through the second portion of the tribulation, which is called Jacob's trouble. And it is going to be horrendous. Now, in my scenario, I show you what you would have to be dealing with if you're left behind. And let me tell you something. When you read my script, just put your name in it and imagine that you're this person facing what I'm showing you based on what the Lord revealed to us what was going to happen to these people who are left behind. So the fact is, we know that there is going to be a third temple, without a doubt. Now, I've been warning, as I said, the steps that have to be taken in order to allow the Jews to build this temple. And we know that it's close, because the steps that I was talking about, there's only really one step left. Now, before we get to this last step, I put up a warning that I gave to the people who come to my website and to my YouTube videos. In 2021, again, I told them exactly what was going to happen, and obviously, if you know the word of the Lord, you would expect it to unfold, which it has. So let me play just a little bit of the video for you, so maybe it will encourage you to listen to the whole thing because it's dead on. It's almost like the Israelis were like a fly on a wall when I made this video because it's all happened. Watch this.
Hi everyone, this is Frank DiMora, the author of the book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. I have a big smile on my face today, and the reason why is because some of the warnings that I've been giving to you over these many years has come to pass. And I want to explain very briefly what I'm talking about because it has to do with the third Jewish temple that's going to be built. Now, you can go over to my website, one of my websites, BibleProphecyMan.com, and scroll down. You'll see the link. Click the link and you can get the book for free. I have detailed information about the rebuilding of the temple. I've also made a video, a documentary, that is a little over an hour and a half long, but it's full of evidence, proof that this third temple that Jesus prophesied that was going to be rebuilt just prior to his second coming is in the process, we know of. It's going to be built shortly. And I've been giving the steps, warning you what was going to happen, each one of the steps, to finally get us to the point where that prophecy was completely fulfilled. And today, there was one of the steps completed. Now, the steps that I'm referring to are the steps, step by step, leading up to the Jews praying, first of all, on the Temple Mount, which they have been barred from for so long. Now, what I'm going to do is show you two very short clips from my documentary, which I produced back in 2017, when I was warning about what would happen next. Let me play those, and then we'll come back to connect the dots. This news will blow you away. At least it should blow you away if you're a Christian. If you're a non-Christian, this news may not mean much to you. However, it should mean a lot to you, a great deal to you, because the information that we're seeing in the news is direct information giving us warnings exactly how close we are to the rise of the Antichrist, and seeing the third temple being built, of which the Jews will not only go up and pray, but they will be worshiping on that Temple Mount in their temple. Watch this short clip from that 2017 documentary. For years I've been warning you what is going to take place on the Temple Mount to cause the Jews to be able to go up and pray. And prior to making the seminar, I stopped in Pastor Dwayne's office to show him some of the warnings that I gave in the past and what has transpired today to fulfill the warnings. Take a look at this article. Jews pray on Temple Mount as Islamic Waqf. Arabs boycott holy site over metal detectors. The breaking Israel news that came out October the 26th of 2016 gives us information about what's happening at the Temple Mount. The headline reads, for the first time ever, Jews allowed to pray on Temple Mount as thousands ascend for holidays. So they're already starting. They're going to need these cable cars. They're going to need the rail systems and the buses. In a not-so-subtle response to the recent UNESCO resolutions denying all connection between Jerusalem and the Jewish people, record-breaking numbers of Jews ascended to the Temple Mount over the 3-week holiday period encompassing Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And in an incredible reversal of the usual status quo, some were even allowed to pray there. Haaretz reported, while the number of non-Muslim visitors permitted on the Temple Mount is usually restricted, a relatively quiet holiday season allowed for record numbers of Jewish visitors to ascend, and marking a small but significant shift in enforced policy to discreetly pray at the site, which is considered the holiest in Judaism. All told, over 3,000 Jews, many of them religious, visited the temple over the holiday period. I would recommend that any Christian who loves the Lord keep going on in Israel, East Jerusalem, and on the Temple Mount area, because you're going to see a lot of activity concerning the Jews making headway, allowing their people to go up and have the rights, just like the Muslims do right now. The steps we're seeing taken by the Israeli government are forging the way for the appearance of the Antichrist. So off and on, for these many years, we've seen limited times where the Jews were able to go up to the Temple Mount and to pray. However, I knew things had to have changed permanently, because the fact of the matter is the prophecy in the scriptures tells us it has to take place, because the prophecies, in order to be fulfilled, the Jews have to have full access to the Temple Mount and full access to be able to pray on the Temple Mount, but to actually worship there on the Temple Mount in East Jerusalem at their temple. If you watch my documentary, you'll see the picture, steps that are changing the status quo. And you may not know what the status quo is, but very briefly, what it means is that the Arabs who are actually maintaining the day-to-day workings of the Temple Mount area, they don't want Jews up in the Temple Mount. It's as simple as that. And the people running the day-to-day operations under the hands of the Jordanians, they constantly say no status quo changes. And what that means is no changes in not allowing the Jews to go up on the Temple Mount, and especially not to pray. But in my warning, I said that the status quo was going to change, and it was definitely one of the steps.
Now, I'm going to stop it right there, because if you're interested, like I said, you can go to my website and you can watch the entire video. Now, this is amazing news to me, because I expected it to happen all the way back many, many years ago when I told people, please watch the news concerning this Temple Mount area. So the National Security Administrator, Ben-Gvir, visits Temple Mount on Jerusalem Day, says prayer and prostration are permitted. So what we have here is a member, an official of the government, allowing the Jews to go up and actually prostrate themselves on that area that I said it was going to take place. And he's saying that it's okay to do this. And this is a mind blower, because they haven't been able to do this. But as I said, it's happening, and it has to happen, because the next step, folks, are, guess what? We don't know exactly how it's going to transpire, but it will. They're going to start building that third temple. Now, a few days after I posted this information, and again, you can go to my website and read what I posted there. So this news broke on May the 26th, 2025, the day after I put up my script showing you what was going to happen in the last days on the Temple Mount. That's how I began my script. And then the next day, we had this information that came out of Israel, where this finance minister, again, a government official of Israel, said that he wanted to build, now's the time to build the Jewish third temple. So the rhetoric from government officials is speeding up, and it has to speed up, because the prophecy has to be fulfilled. Now, over these many years in my warnings, I also warned that if you watch the news, if you're diligent about it, you're going to see more government officials start to say, we want the building of our third temple. We own the land. It's our sovereignty on the Temple Mount. Let's do it. So let me just show you a list. But before I go there, here is another one. Israeli MK proposes dividing Temple Mount between Jews and Muslims. Now, this is a crazy, crazy statement to a lot of people. But to the word of the Lord, it's not crazy. It's what the Lord said was going to happen in the last days. Let me show you the prophecy. And then I'll show you a list of all these people in the government that are now saying, now's the time, build the temple. The last step of all the steps that I've been showing you. Now, I put this picture up. I put it up at my site, the coming soon to the Temple Mount. And I believe that this is what it may look like. Ezekiel, the prophet in the Old Testament, Ezekiel 43:8, this is what the Lord showed him. In their setting of their threshold by my thresholds, and their post by my post, and the wall between me and them, they have even defiled my holy name by their abominations that they have committed. And wherefore I have consumed them in my anger. So this is a prophecy about God's building side by side with what? With the Dome of the Rock, the Muslims' third holiest religious place on the Temple Mount. So it's not a coincidence that this Israeli figure here is saying divide the Temple Mount between the Jews and the Muslims. All he's doing is pointing right to what the scripture talked about. It will happen. Now, when you go over to my site, you'll be able to see these Israeli figures, people in the government, who are saying, hey, look, we want the third temple. I'll just highlight them right here. You see the one that we just talked about. Here's another one. Here's another one. The list keeps growing the closer we get to the actual building of that temple. So it is being set in stone, if you will. Little by little, we're seeing the footprints of where all prophecy is leading to. Jews going up into the Temple Mount. Government officials saying, we want that temple built now. And one of the most important issues right now, I believe, is the Abraham Accords that were established in 2020 by President Donald Trump. So let us keep in mind what Daniel talked about in Daniel 9:27. There's going to be a confirmation of a covenant for 7 years. Now, there isn't a chance, I don't know for sure, but I just have a gut feeling that it will end up being, there's a chance that the Abraham Accords that started back in 2020 with Donald Trump will be the ones that will be confirmed by the Antichrist. Now, that doesn't mean that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I believe that there's another more powerful figure that is coming on the scene, and he will confirm what Donald Trump has already set in place in 2020. Now, since the Abraham Accords of 2020, there has been a host of nations, and nations that we thought would never join the Accords, but they are. And when you go over to my site, you could read the news of who they are. For example, who would have thought Syria and Lebanon would join the Accords before the Saudi Arabians, of which they're talking about joining the Accords? This is like unheard of. But the people who are not watching the news, they don't know how many nations are in the wings waiting to join these Accords. Look at this. I'll give you the names, and then when you click on the link, it'll give you the news so that you'll understand what I'm telling you is the truth. All of these nations are lining up. The many nations, as Daniel said, here's the one, Saudi Arabia, that they believe will be secondary to Lebanon. So it's happening. And what this tells us is once the Jews go up to the mount to pray, then the temple's built. Well, the only thing left is time to start the tribulation period, because we know when the temple's standing there and that accord is confirmed, that's what kicks off the last 7 years. 7 years that the Antichrist is on this earth. And for those of you who don't know, what happens is Satan incarnates into this man. And when he goes into this third temple and tells everybody he's God, that's when all hell breaks out. But there's still going to be these birth pangs for 3.5 years that people are going to have to go through. But I believe personally, in the middle of the tribulation is when the church will be taken out. This is where my script comes in, because I'll give you information using the Bible prophecies in the Word to show you why I believe that it will happen in the middle of the tribulation. So when you begin to hear news, and you will begin to hear more news about these Abraham Accords, I can guarantee it. Keep in mind, and I said this in my report a few days ago, when you take a look at what Israel has just accomplished, it's leading to allowing their people to go up to the Temple Mount and pray. Let me tell you why. They went into Gaza and physically destroyed that area so that these people are no longer a problem to Israel. They were a problem, and they were one of the peoples were stopping or trying to stop the Jews to go up to the Temple Mount. They're eliminated. Then you have Lebanon, which Israel went in there and they took care of the Hezbollah, who were again the people who did not want the Jews to go up. Then what does Israel do? They started bombing Syria to the point where the Syrian government went into chaos and it was taken over by another person who now wants to join the Abraham Accords. And they were people who were stopping. So what's happened now is Israel, one by one, eliminating the people who have been antagonistic, keeping the Jews from going to the Temple Mount. So if they're out of the picture now, this is why I believe you have these government officials going up and allowing the people to prostrate themselves and pray right on the area that has been kept away from them for so long. Things are changing. The status quo, like I've been saying for years, is changing. And you can help me reach other people for Christ, because everyone needs to know this information, because it is happening. And because it's happening, it's an indicator exactly how close we are to the beginning of the tribulation period. If you love your family members, if you love your friends, send this information to them and let them make a decision. Either reject Christ and find out what happens when the rapture takes place, or receive Jesus now, and when the rapture does happen, you'll have the road home to heaven, where Jesus today is preparing a place for anyone who accepts him. Anyone who is left behind has done so because it was their choice. And God doesn't want any to perish, and he's welcoming anyone who will accept what Jesus Christ did on the cross. Please leave your comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. And all my information is free. And my newest work on this screenplay is also free. Please take advantage of it. God bless.